Hello, everybody. Welcome to Pharmaceutical Soccer. I am so be here in this be on this beautiful Pharmaceutical Soccer Monday that we get to share with you. Uh,
Which one of us speaks English as a third language?
well, I did that pause for a specific reason, Clay, because I didn't want to say it was a fantastic weekend when it came to watching what we do this podcast on. So I specifically took a pause there because I didn't necessarily have any words to fill the space for that. Just like National SC did not have any play to, I mean, well, I guess they filled the space with just nothing. But anyways, Clay, Trainum, Valer Shapilla, I am here with them as always. And it's good to be here. Valer, what's up, man? How's your weekend?
It's fine, just like Nashville SC, I guess. Yeah, nothing
Wow, we are
special.
literally putting together the most entertaining show of all time this.
Well, I don't know. I feel like my last few weekends have been pretty exciting. I feel like I've been doing a lot of things, whether it's traveling or doing other things around that just seem like I would like to share with people. This weekend was not that. I I didn't do anything. I ordered food mainly. Um, and you know what? I watched, I don't know, but at least 10 hours of the Euros, if not more.
I did watch lot of Euros over the weekend.
Combine that with other, maybe 5 hours or so of MLS Saturday night. I mean, it was a very soccer heavy weekend for me. And yeah, I'm okay with that. I needed that. It's been busy, like I said, and this week I'm heading actually to Atlanta to watch the Copa America opener between Argentina and Canada. So I think that's going to be really fun. I'm excited. I'm going with my family. My sister's coming from Michigan to Atlanta, so I'm meeting them down there. And yeah, I think I'm hopefully I'm hoping for a good game. I'm hoping it's not like an Argentina, 4-1 or 5-1 or something like that. But if Canada can put up a fight, I'll be really excited. But that's the most exciting things happening to me this week, and the weekend was just soccer.
I'm sorry, Clay. I'm taking the transition here. I did get to watch an Argentina 5-1 victory over the weekend, so that is mainly why I'm taking that transition. Because I went to watch Argentina and Guatemala play on Friday, so that was fun. I played the game that I really like to play with any team that Messi is on. What is the first like hit that you see outside of Messi? Do either of you want to take one guess at what the first kit I saw was outside of Messi when it comes to Argentina player?
I feel like there's an obvious one, but I'm going to say Tevez.
Okay. Valer?
Uh, Dybala, I don't know.
That would be Argentinian MLS legend Gonzalo Higuain was the first kit outside of a
Makes
Messi
sense.
kit that I saw. So that was very interesting. But it was a lot of fun. A lot of Guatemalan fans in DC, apparently. I started yelling drunkenly with the Guatemalan fans. So that was a really good time. I went to go see Dave Matthews Band as well on Saturday. Shout out to Jerry Wadersky, friend of the show, and all of that for letting me come.
He's not a friend of the show. He keeps telling me how he doesn't listen to the show.
That is
I'm
true.
tired of this.
Jerry
He's
does.
not getting a shout out.
That's
No.
fair.
Yeah.
Jerry does say he specifically doesn't listen to the show because he doesn't want to hear the three of us talk just regularly about it, which is unfair because I don't live there anymore. So he doesn't get that. So I don't know. It's fine. I still love you. And I watched a lot of Euros this weekend. So that was very nice. And currently, I decided to make one bet, and it's turning out very wrong for me. And now I'm going to cash out and get all my money back. Clay, what's going on with you?
I didn't do hardly anything this weekend, so I had a very Nashville SC approach to life this weekend, up until yesterday evening, at least, where I drove down to Huntsville to go to Huntsville City FC match, and they were on a run and they were playing well, and then they lost 4-0. And we can talk about that later, but it was a good time. It's a completely different atmosphere and a completely different sort of game day environment than going to an NSC game, but not in a bad way. It's just a different atmosphere, and I really enjoyed it and had a good time. And there's Huntsville's a cool city, reminds me a lot of my hometown, so I always enjoy going down there.
So I'm starting to notice a trend here. So first, you go to a rhythm game when they're on a streak, they lose. You go to a Huntsville match.
I go to every rhythm game and they usually win. So you can just go ahead and stop it
To
there.
be fair, Clay and I did go to the rhythm game during the midweek and they won 7-0, I'm pretty sure. So
Yeah.
yeah, I don't think you can use that one anymore. There was one time that they lost.
Yeah, they've lost like one home game in the last like 3 years, and I've been to almost all of them. So I feel like I'm doing all right streak
You
wise.
were at that loss. I'm just saying. And then now Huntsville is dealing with the clay
Well,
problem.
some of us still support women's soccer in our city.
I do support women's soccer in our city.
Oh
In my
yeah?
city,
Yeah.
I do. I just currently
They-
don't live in the same city as you. I still support the rhythm, absolutely. If I could stream those games, I absolutely would. But we all
You
know
can.
You
You
can.
can. You will not be
They're
watching
all
them. Yeah,
they're
you
all
didn't
streaming
expect that, huh?
everyone.
You didn't expect that when you said those words, huh? My boy Ronan was
no,
on the call
I
too.
absolutely did expect that to happen as I say something. It's not like we haven't been doing the show for 5 years where I have to bite my words based on something stupid I say. It's really not that hard to figure out that, of course, right when I said that, I knew there was absolutely a chance for me to watch those. Um, I mean, now because the season's over, but what do you why are you flailing your arms, Valer? What would you like?
It's time to move on
I
and
would
talk
like to
about
move on
Nashville
to the
SC.
next topic.
What is the next topic? Nashville Soccer
The
Club?
coaching surge.
Oh,
Literally anything else that has to do with Nashville SC.
but I don't want to talk about that.
Anyway, so there have been some recent reports and some changes that we'll go and dive into deeper in the second segment. But for now, I do have a question for you, Clay, specifically. What would you rather do than watch a 0-0 draw against the Red Bulls again?
Well, I've had about four root canals in my life, and I think each of those wasn't more enjoyable than watching that game. And I I also I also think I'd rather have a third reconstructive knee surgery than watch yet another Red Bull New York Nashville scoreless draw.
Yeah, the
I
funny thing
started
about
doing phone games in the middle of that game. It was such a nightmare.
Yeah, the funny thing is that rarely do you have like a group of people predict something and all of it come true. Like every single person was right that I talked to. Everybody predicted this game to go this way with like slight variations of maybe the score line. A goal here, a goal there.
Which was the ridiculous thing is that you both picked a goal to happen in this match, and I thought you were both absolutely
To be
asinine.
fair, the Red Bulls scored twice. They just happened once they hit it with their hands and the other one was offside.
And Sam Surridge, that miss.
Yeah,
I
stuff.
mean, yeah.
And I'm sure we'll get into it a little bit more, but I do want to give a shout out first and foremost to a new Patreon member. So, clap your hands, stand up, do whatever you need to do. Huge shout out to Tyler, who joined our Patreon a few days ago, maybe a couple days ago. As we're growing this community, we are trying new perks and new things that we can do with the Patreon community. One of those is now a chat that you can use through the Patreon app or on the web, where you can talk to us throughout the week and obviously during games as well. We're trying to build this community, and I don't know how the notifications work on Patreon, so you might need to turn on your notification to see the chat ones because it's separate from the regular posts that we make. So make sure to check that out. And also to the folks who have already joined our Patreon, thank you so much. We really appreciate it. It's $5 a month, but it means the world to us. So thank you so much. And special thank you to Tyler, who joined our Patreon recently. And that community is growing, and we're very thankful for it. So keep them coming.
Yay, Tyler. Is there a specific reason why I didn't get that question, Valer? Why only Clay? Is this a bit that you guys put together when it comes to the what would you would rather watch than a National SC draw? Did you guys put this together without me?
Instead of asking me this, you could have just answered the question right now.
I would rather.
That's like podcasting 101, you know.
Is it really? Okay,
Yeah.
sorry. I didn't realize that specifically. I'm not good at this podcasting thing, as we've established, obviously. I would rather watch Dave Matthews Band for 3.5 hours. I'd
Did you
rather.
actually do that though? Like, was it during the game?
Yeah, it was during the game, and I
Oh,
absolutely did
okay.
not watch the game, nor did I watch. I actually had a text with somebody. I watched probably 2 songs of Dave Matthews Band and 0 of the NSC match, and I felt equally like I got nothing out of each experience, even though I was in both of them. So that was fun. Uh, Clay.
Well, we're kind of running out of things to talk about in this first segment, so I'm just going to go ahead and just give a quick update because there were teams that did score goals in Nashville over the last week. And so quick shout out to the other teams that play soccer. We'll start with the WPSL. As Blair mentioned, we were at the Nashville Rhythm game against FC Nashville, the first ever uh, Nashville Derby for in women's soccer. And it was a 7-0 win by the Rhythm. That was their final home game of the year. There will not be a home playoff game this year. So the Nashville Rhythm's home season is done for the season. They have a few more games left. They have an outside shot of making the playoffs. Things have to happen. They're not in total control of that, but they can make the playoffs and go from there, maybe make another deep postseason run. FC Nashville played another game against Atlanta Fire. Not surprisingly, they lost 4-0. I'm not sure that they've scored a goal yet this year. And I will say, to go back to that Rhythm game, the FC Nashville goalkeeper was absolutely far and away, unbelievably the best player on the pitch in that game, and their team lost 7-0. That's how one-sided it was. She had probably double-digit saves and 2 cleared off the line. So it was kind of a nightmare for them. And then on the other side in the USL, you've got TSC in the W League. They are doing well still. They play at Nolensville High School. They won last week 3-0 over Birmingham Legion and then drew 2-2 against Southern Soccer Academy. They will be playing at Athens later this week, as well as against Greenville Liberty at home against Nolensville High School. And on the men's side, TSC and the USL League Two drew had a scoreless draw with Athens, and they will be hosting Southern Soccer Academy later this week. Actually, tomorrow at Nolensville High School. So their season's still ongoing. A couple weeks left in that before the playoffs get started. So it's not just Nashville SC playing, but not everyone is particularly playing well at the moment in Nashville. Of the 4 teams playing um, high level amateur soccer. I guess 5, 4 playing high level amateur soccer. So keep an eye out for that. Try and catch a TSC home game at Nolensville, and I believe FC Nashville plays at Davidson Academy still, but I can't seem to find their upcoming schedule. So it's just something to keep an eye out on.
Thank you for that update, Clay. I very much appreciate that. That was very nice. Look, we do have to talk about the match just a little bit, unfortunately, or fortunately, if you really do want to talk about that match. But we also do have some coaching names that have finally been dropping when it comes to coaches that Nashville SC are looking for. So we're going to talk a little bit about that as well. We're going to do that next, right here on Pharmaceutical Soccer. And we are back here on Pharmaceutical Soccer at Pharma Soccer on our Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. And we also do have our Patreon, as we mentioned. If you also want to shout out on the show, just like Tyler just got one, join our Patreon. And as Valer mentioned, we also have a fun new feature where you can chat with us, which is great. So you should go check that out. Also, pharmasoccer.com if you want to check that out as well. Guys, I do have breaking news I would like to talk about from the Euros specifically. I know this is wild to hear, and this is absolutely breaking news. Romelu Lukaku just missed an open chance. I don't know if this is shocking to anybody, but I just wanted to throw that out there. Anyways, okay. Look, Nashville SC played the Red Bulls on Saturday. There was indeed a soccer match. I did find the athletic update very interesting when it just said happened with a period, and that was the only news relation that happened. I do want to talk about a couple things because I think there might be just kind of a couple general topics to talk about. Does Because
I
go.
don't know what you said at all. I have no idea what you said.
Yeah, you're having some connection issues, Steven. So we'll get back with Steven in a minute. But on that match, we'll have to first. I think the Red Bulls were better. I think it's fair to say that, and I think it's fair to even say that they created more chances. They had more shots, and overall they were a better team. That said, they did not play very well. I think it's very important to note that they weren't playing so well that it forced Nashville to kind of go down and not be able to do much. To where I think their game at Georges Park when these two teams met, the Red Bulls did play exponentially better than Nashville, and I thought the Red Bulls were much better side than Nashville SC when they played at Georges Park. In this game, while the Red Bulls were better, I didn't think they were that much better than Nashville SC. And I think Nashville had a couple chances that there was a shot blocked by Hani Mukhtar, and then obviously the Sam Surridge chance. The other thing is that Nashville had the ball for a good bit, like we expected, because it's against the Red Bull. And I think they created enough movement, but that movement never really flourished into chances. And even the chances they created were all half chances, not anything substantial. And I think that's been the biggest differentiator here between an elite team and a good team or a good-ish team like Nashville SC. Rumbo Montali, we just talked to him earlier this morning on Monday, and one of the things he talked about is the midfielders being more proactive and taking more risks. Because I asked him about the midfielders, and I said, like, what is it that they need to do in order to get this engine going? And that was the one thing he did ask the midfielders to be more proactive, to maybe take a little bit more chances and be able to move the ball forward. I think that would be one way to create more dangerous chances. The other thing that the thing that kind of goes with that is that with Jacob Schaffelberg missing, that run in behind is not really available because Tyler Boyd and Alex Moyle do not play that position the same way. So it was less opportunities for the midfielders to pass to. But overall, I think that would be the first thing I would try to fix if I wasn't that technical staff is how can we get the midfield to move the ball forward?
Yeah, and I think like going into the midfield, one of the guys who was taking some risks, not all of them worked out was Drew Yearwood. Like I think the one thing that you can take coming out of that game is, we've been talking about the last few weeks on here. He should be a lock to start on the team sheet right now because the midfield plays better when he's out there. But I can't tell you how many times, because the Red Bulls did turn it over a good amount. Like they did have an errant pass here and there, and I can't tell you how many times in that game they had an errant pass and then nobody pushed forward, or they didn't play the ball to push forward. They played it side to side, which is I think sometimes an overstated thing around certain midfielders around Nashville SC. But in this case, in this game, I think it was absolutely true because there were times when you're playing on the road, your team, Nashville SC, even without Jacob Schaffelberg, is going to be a team that is dependent on scoring out of transition and creating chances out of transition. And if you force a turnover in a bad part of the field, whether it's Drew Yearwood, Alex Moyle, because he had a couple chances too, Brian Anunga, of course. If you're a team that's good in transition, you can't immediately go side to side or backwards unless you have someone going up forward. Like you need to be taking those chances because they don't come very often in a game and trying to get something out of it. And that was the thing that stuck out to me in the game more than anything else. Cause I would get I'm watching on the couch and there's a forced turnover, like borderline attacking third in the middle of the field. And you're like, oh, here you go. And then it just comes to nothing. And by the time the ball gets played forward, the defense is already back and there's going to be nothing coming out of it, or they'll force a turnover because they're good at pressing, the Red Bulls after all.
The other thing about playing side to side, like Clay was saying, is that a lot of Nashville SC players, or maybe it's not fair to say a lot, but Nashville SC players in general are not very comfortable on the ball. That's not their game. We saw that a couple seasons ago with Joe Willis. He's improved since, I think, on the ball with his feet. But we saw it with Josh Bauer this game. And even somebody like Jack Mayer and Dan Lovitz and Walker Zimmerman are more comfortable on the ball. You can see how they sort of demand that respect when they are on the ball. on the ball. But same thing with Sean Davis. I don't think the being on the ball is where their strengths lie. So there's a lot of work to be done, whether it's in training or just in terms of game experience. Oh, if all of a sudden we're saying Nashville SC is going to turn into this team that plays from the back, there's going to be a lot of changes, and that's going to take a lot of time for the players to adapt to that. It's not something that you can do overnight. The one thing that kind of bothered me was that they kept passing it to Josh Bauer, even though he was clearly struggling, and Red Bulls had marked him as a target, and they kept going at him. And Nashville SC kept passing it to Josh Bauer, where I think a little bit of a break would have done him really well.
A couple other things I kind of want to bring up, just because I thought they were very interesting tidbits. It was really cool to see Forza Jago and Skinner on the bench. A couple Huntsville players looking like we're starting to see that kind of Nashville Academy, kind of product come into play here for Nashville SC. I want to talk just a little bit about Hani Mukhtar as well. This seemed like one of those games where Hani kind of did have the ability to take over and kind of use his ability to completely change the game, whether it's just one instance or not. And it just seemed like it didn't happen. Is Hani's performances the past couple of weeks worrying you guys at all? Or is this something that you are just, kind of waiting for the new coach to come in and kind of change it?
I mean, obviously, I think with a new coach is not just Hani, but it will give the team an identity that I think they can latch on to where currently is just stabilizing, right? That's what an interim is. It's just a stabilizer until you get the real deal coach. For Hani specifically, he hasn't had an open play goal since like early April, I'm pretty sure. It is worrying in the sense that there is nobody else that is taking the game by the scruff of the neck for Nashville SC other than him. We saw one hat trick from Sam Surridge, and since then he hasn't scored a single goal. Tyler Boyd isn't yet kicking the way they Nashville wanted him to. And then when you have those three attacking players not performing to the level, it is worrying. And I think it's worrying just simply because there's no one else that is performing. To where early in the season, like Schaffelberg was scoring a couple of goals, it made me less worried. But now it does go back to that which is like if Hani doesn't do anything, then Nashville doesn't do anything. And I think that's really worrying going into the rest of the season.
It's very reminiscent of Hani, honestly, in the first season, where when he's making an impact in a game, it's very clear. And so you look and say, well, he's got, 2 goals and 2 assists in the 4 matches leading up to this. 2 are penalties. He missed a penalty, and both assists came in the same game. And I think that we saw that a lot from Hani before he was like, MLS All-Star MVP Hani. We would see he was really good against Houston, but he didn't do a whole lot the 2 games before that or the game after that. And I think we've seen a lot of that stop-start from Hani this year. And I think that that's not unexpected. I think that with the amount of uncertainty around the team, with sort of what Nashville's been playing like this year, which has been, you mentioned not related to Nashville, but you talked about Romelu Lukaku missing a couple chances, right? Like when he was good with Everton and it was great, he was getting a bunch of chances. He's still missed a ton of them, but he had so many opportunities, which is the reason why he looks so good at Everton. When you've got Hani and he's not getting more than 1 opportunity a match, 2 opportunities a match, whether that be not influencing in the game himself or the players around him, he suddenly looks a little bit more pedestrian. In Nashville, when they're not going forward, when they're not creating stuff out of transition, that one Hani miss sticks out. But if you go back and look at the season he scored, 20 some odd goals, or the 2 seasons he scored 20 some odd goals, you'll see that he misses a lot of golden opportunities in those games too. And it's because he's getting more opportunities to make it. So the one miss stands out way more than it would in, say, the MVP season or the golden, or, when he leads the league in goal contributions.
And I do have one more note on the game, and I think that's the last thing we're going to say of the game because we probably talked about it more than anyone ever was going to talk about this game. At the end there, we saw Teal Bunbury come on and play sort of like a right wing / striker, and then Sam Surridge was like a left wing / forward, and Hani was somewhat in the middle. It was an interesting sort of setup. And Ben Wright, my colleague, asked Roomba about that. And his answer I thought was very interesting. And he said it's pretty much because he wants the best players that could win him the game to be on the pitch. He said he didn't want just 1 point. He wanted to go out there and get 3 points. And that's why he kept all the attackers on the pitch, albeit they were playing in different positions, not their own positions. He wanted to go and get that 3 points at Red Bulls. That to me, I think is very important because that's something I've never heard Gary Smith say explicitly like that. Maybe he's tried in the past, but I think we just got to give Roomba some credit for wanting to go and get the win and not just being satisfied with the draw, because I think that's a very important thing. And he did say also that he has a little bit more freedom as an interim coach to try things because he knows he's not going to be the coach coming up, which gives him a little bit more freedom of like what to do on the pitch.
Clay, did you have something? Do you have your hand?
Well, it seemed like a good transition, but I do think that that's worth noting just because like I remember how many times have we come on this show, I keep referencing things from the past where we is like, can Randall Leal and Hani Mukhtar play together? How can they set them up to get them on the same field at the same time? Like that was a conversation that lasted months on this show years ago. And I think that it's helpful that we're seeing that sort of conversation play out where Rumba is saying, these are the guys that can win a game. I need to have more good players up the field. And I think that that's something that we haven't always seen, even from Rumba, to be fair. I think there's been a lot of on-the-job learning going on here, as you can tell with like the Drew Yearwood sort of inconsistency. I do value that. And I think that that's a really interesting question when this team is back to full strength, whatever that may actually encounter when it comes to guys like Boyd and Schaffelberg and whatnot.
Yeah, and speaking with that kind of just like inconsistency and certain, like we've talked about Roomba a lot here, but obviously Roomba is not going to be the long-term option here. And I think Flair made a really, kind of, fun thing of saying like, yeah, like he gets to do what he wants because he's not the long-term option. With last week happening, though, we finally got some reports of what that long-term option might be. Finally, we've been waiting for this. Clay was really excited for his potential bet to be closed, but it's still not. Sorry, Clay. It looks like Falair is going to win this one. But
I did say it would come out on a Thursday, though, and it did.
It just was rumored, not the official. The hire was not made on a Thursday. We don't know that yet.
I said although it was the news, not the hiring. So you cut me off saying what you said. So thanks for that, Valaire.
But anyways, a top target has been identified, and there's also some other potential targets as well in these reports that have been coming out. So I will let Valaire kind of just give a rundown specifically about what these reports are and who the managers are.
Yeah, on Thursday last week, as Clay knows very well what day it was, Tom Bogert of The Athletic, who is like, the Fabrizio of MLS, if you would. He's, his word is pretty reliable in MLS circles. Reported that BJ Callahan, who is currently the assistant to Greg Berhalter with the U.S. men's national team, is the front runner for the Nashville vacancy. He also mentioned in his report that Joseph Reyes was another guy Nashville was looking at, but for all intents and purposes, BJ Callahan is the front runner. For BJ, he used to be also an assistant with the Philadelphia Union, who obviously built one of the best MLS teams. Fortunately for them, they didn't win a whole lot. They did win a Supporters' Shield, to be fair. With obviously he was working under Jim Curtin, who's one of the best managers in MLS currently. And with Greg Berhalter, he's had a pretty successful run with the U.S. men's national team, including stepping in as interim while the drama was going on with Berhalter and winning the Nations League while an interim with the U.S. men's national team. So pretty interesting resume. A lot of people had already put him as a candidate for a lot of MLS vacancies. He is, he's definitely experienced in the league. He knows what this league is. The only sort of concerning thing is that he doesn't have any head coaching experience at the professional ranks. So that's a little bit of a drawback, but again, he's very experienced otherwise in this game.
Yeah, it's a fairly typical MLS hire. I think that the name stands out because of sort of the situation and circumstances around the national team. But typically, your top assistant off the men's national team, especially one who has MLS experience, is going to be a main candidate, a top tier candidate in the league. You've seen stuff like Jesse Marsh. I mean, that's Bob Bradley. Like this is kind of a typical tried and true thing over decades in MLS that this is where you kind of go for your head coach. I don't think I think going from Philly is obviously a good mark. He was in Philly for a good while too. I mean, they really built something together in Philly. And over that span, they really pulled their academy and their youth setup pretty far down the road, which is something that Nashville's still dealing with and trying to figure out. So that part is also helpful. But it's not exactly the most inspired hire. Like this is the type of hire that you would expect in any of the MLS teams with openings to try to make. And I find that interesting. I think that this, we were talking whenever it happened, uh, are they going to try and go international because of how it lined up with the window? And it does seem very much in line with the type of hire that Mike Jacobs would make, which is also interesting because I do think Mike Jacobs' job is kind of on the line here in the next year or two. And I wasn't totally sure that he would have the final say on who gets hired in this position. And this very much sounds like it was one of his hire. And Gio Savarese, if it doesn't end up being BJ Callahan, it sounds like it's going to be. Bogert today said that they just have to agree on contract, and he expects that will happen for the hire to take place. But like the guys who are up for the job are guys that you would expect someone who is an American soccer, like domestic built, MLS centric GM to hire. And so I find it kind of interesting on that front. I also think I've been joking about this on uh, I've been joking about this on Twitter the last like few weeks that they'd gotten rid of Gary just in case the team got a little bit of momentum and their guy wasn't available. And if it is Callahan, I feel like that's less a conspiracy theory because he's not going to be available to coach for, potentially another month. So I don't know that that's a win now decision. And I find that also interesting considering the press conference after the firing of Gary Smith.
That was the biggest thing I wanted to note is that to me, Callahan seems like a project, less built for the future, sort of hiring a little bit less so than someone like Savarese or any sort of more experienced, I guess, MLS coaches out there where they are a win now, because we've talked about it. The National SC roster is in a win now situation. To me, BJ Callahan is more of a project. Now, it's really between BJ Callahan's like potential, I guess, or the way he kind of it's more liberal, I guess, in the way he plays soccer. It's between that or somebody that's more of a known quantity like a Savarese who brings you that experience, but maybe his ceiling is not as high as you want, right? But that floor is pretty high. So BJ Callahan, while he might have lower floor, his ceiling I think is higher than somebody like Savarese, who we've already seen what they can do in MLS. Another coach to come out of that Philly sort of tree is Pat Noonan, who's completely killing it with Cincinnati, of course. Won Supporters Shield, turned that project from a 3-time Wooden Spoon winner to a Supporters Shield winner in about a year and a half. So, it could go that way, but also we've seen it go the other way.
It would have been funny if he would have hired another Greg Berhalter assistant, Anthony Hudson, who did not have a very successful run in MLS, but is a former Colorado Rapids manager. And that would have been a very funny decision to go with. They would have gone with a different Greg Berhalter assistant.
Also, this is not obviously done deal. Things change in soccer. So that's why we're not spending maybe as much time on it as we would. Once it gets announced, then we can spend a lot more time on it. But things can change. You don't know what's going to happen. So keep that in mind.
We do have a 2-match week upcoming here for National SC, so we got to get into that. We got to talk a little bit about Huntsville and then make some predictions for this week coming up. And we'll do that next right here on Pharmaceutical Soccer. And we are back right here on Pharmaceutical Soccer at Pharma Soccer on our Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. And as I mentioned in the other segments, we do have a Patreon as well. Check that out. You can get a shout out on the show, just like Tyler did in the first segment. So make sure you check that out. We also have our website, pharmasoccer.com, with all the information that you may possibly need. Look, we're in full swing here in summer, even though it's getting hotter outside. Nashville SC is still going to be playing a lot of soccer now that kind of international break is done for a little bit. Well, I mean, it's still going on, but MLS is still going on while there's a lot of international soccer being played. We have a 2-match week, and the schedule is really getting pretty heavy as well with some of the competition and the matches we have, and we'll talk about that when we, make our predictions for this week. 2 tough matchups, one on Wednesday and then one on Saturday. Are we starting to, Clay? I know you were at the Huntsville match. We saw a couple of those players on the bench specifically for Nashville SC did not get subbed in, unfortunately. Do you think we're going to be seeing some more of these players being called up from Huntsville?
Steven's having connection issues. I know where he was going there. So I didn't hear most of that, but I know where he was going. I do think it is likely that we're going to see these Huntsville guys back with the team, back with the big team for certainly one or both of these games. I found it interesting at the game because Forster Jago was once again like pretty dominant in the first half against Chicago. On another day, he's got a couple goals. One was cleared off the line, great header. There was another scrum on one. So he was playing really, really, really well. And it was interesting because I actually ran into Liam Doyle at the game, and he said that they got him on a plane right after, brought him down to Huntsville. They got to Huntsville at like midnight, and then played later in the afternoon at the Huntsville game. But Ajago, after dominating, came off at halftime or just right after halftime. And I thought that was really interesting because he was playing so well. He didn't play the day before. And so that makes me wonder if we can expect to see him against Toronto. Like, is it lining up for him to get his run out in MLS play? Because he's using the roster spot. They've brought him the last few games. He's been on the bench the last few games. There's a 2-game week. I gotta think that maybe they're gonna give him his first shot at MLS minutes at some point coming soon, and perhaps that will be Wednesday if they're resting him in the second half of that game. And then Skinner, I think he made his first appearance on the bench. I expect he might become a regular on the bench, and maybe we'll see him at some point. I know that they're expecting these guys to play in the Leagues Cup. Wubens Pacius is somebody that they're very excited about. Talking with some folks in Huntsville about him, everyone is really excited about him. They think he might be actually the best player down there, according to some of the folks behind the scenes. And he's not technically eligible to play in MLS this year, but he can play in the Leagues Cup. And so I would expect him to be in the Nashville roster for the Leagues Cup. And so they were really, he had a couple opportunities in the second half of that game, but he didn't like stun anyone. It wasn't one of those, but he did score in his after coming back from injury a few weeks ago, or I guess 2 weeks ago. So some really interesting things going on in Huntsville. And another thing worth noting, Rumba was there. Like, he was at the game the day after the New York game watching those guys, and that makes sense. He is the player development guy. That will be his job after the new coach takes control. So he was down there. So really, really interesting to be down there and kind of see some of these guys up close. And Ajago is just in a different level than the guys he's playing against in most of these Huntsville games.
And one thing about Pacius as well, he's been injured for pretty much the entire season until that game that Clay was talking about, where he came in a couple weeks ago, came in for 15 minutes and scored a goal. He looked really good. I watched that game. I watched a little bit of yesterday's game, but not a whole lot. But yeah, he also came off the bench in that one. So still a long road ahead of him before Leagues Cup, but I would assume that they're trying to get him back to full fitness so he can participate in the Leagues Cup or around that area at least. But first and foremost for these guys, that they need to be consistent with Huntsville, which Ajago seems to be doing. and some of the other players in there as well. But yeah, we will see more of these, especially with Schaffelberg, Moore, and Godoy all being out for Copa America, and soon to be Walker Zimmerman will be going to the Olympics. I would assume those bench spots will open up for some Huntsville guys that we will see frequently. I don't know how many actual minutes they'll get, but we will definitely see them on the bench as backups and sort.
Yeah, which it was also confirmed over the week that Shaq Moore would be on that Copa America roster. He was in the friendlies, but it was confirmed he will be on that roster. That was kind of expected. Walker Zimmerman, same thing on that Olympic roster, confirmed. So he will also be out for a decent amount of time. Jacob Schaffelberg also made the Canada roster as well for Copa America, so that means he will also be out for a decent amount of time. So that does give the ability for a lot of these players to come into play.
They have a pretty hard group. I think Schaffelberg will be back quicker than the others, maybe even Godoy as well.
But we do have two matches again coming up. Another 2-match week here in MLS. Wednesday we do take on Toronto in Toronto, and then we have NYCFC at Geodis Park. So definitely a decent amount of travel as well over the past week. Depending on what happens with the manager search and conversation, this was one of those times where you expected it to kind of be, solidified and ready to go. But it looks like Rumba is taking the helm for these next two matches.
Yeah, we talked about how this stretch is very, very important for Nashville SC, because if you look at the 5 matches after the international break, it was the Red Bulls away, Toronto away, NYCFC at home, Inter Miami at home, and then Columbus away. That's a very tough stretch. We're already 1 through, and they ended up getting a tie in the Red Bulls, which I think most Nashville SC fans would take, if not all Nashville SC fans would take. Toronto is a little bit different. They started the season much better. They've been kind of on and off since then. They have only 1 win in 7. They're not looking their best self. Bernadeschi keeps getting red cards. But he's back for this match. I'm actually just now writing the preview right before we started recording. So look out for that if you want to read some words about Toronto. But also, they have a lot of talent out there. Obviously, Insigne and Bernadeschi are the top 2, but Prince Owusu, who is a striker from Germany, has been have seen some good form. He's not necessarily in good form right now. Tyrese Spicer, who was questionable last match, didn't get to play, might be back. But the biggest thing from Toronto is that they are missing 3 very important guys on international duty. Sean Johnson, who is the USMNT third choice keeper, will be missing. He's Toronto's first choice keeper, and he extended his contract with them. Jonathan Osorio, who is, I believe, the captain of Toronto FC, he will not be there, as well as another Canadian that I just wrote about and can't remember. Rich Hilaria, of course, who's again been instrumental for Toronto lately. So they'll be missing 3 players, just like Nashville SC, and just like Nashville SC, they also have 2 players on long-term injuries. So it's not a full Toronto roster, but it's definitely more full than the last time these 2 teams played at Geodis Park, which was just like a bunch of kids for Toronto and Insigne.
And what about NYCFC?
I didn't prepare as much for them, but I watched their game against Columbus, and I also was in New York to watch them dismantle San Jose 5-1. It was hilarious and really good atmosphere. I talked about that. It shocked me how good of an atmosphere Yankee Stadium had for soccer, because baseball stadiums are not good for soccer. It's still not good, but the atmosphere is pretty nice. And when you have a team that's winning 3rd in the East, they're flying. They're doing well. Even with their loss to Columbus, there's no shame in that. I don't think losing to Columbus with a man down. They actually went up with a man down, but just weren't able to hold it. All in all, they're finally kind of hitting those marks that people set on them last season and this season. And Nick Cushion, the manager, has been really testing it with a lot of young guys who are hungry and trying to make a difference. Their biggest sort of drawback is that they don't have a consistent striker. There's 3 that kind of rotate, and none of them are necessarily in form, but they have so much quality behind them and around them that kind of makes up for it.
And so we can give Valera a breather. Clay, why don't you do your predictions and plugs and all that fun stuff?
Well, first off, shout out to Malachi Jones and Tyrese Spicer, Pride of Lipscomb, that are playing for both of these teams. Spicer playing significantly more and starting usually. I think you should all check out Nashville Soccer Archive. We've got a lot of cool stuff. Like I said, we got some donations last week. Those will be going into the Vanderbilt University Special Collections in the library over there. We are building that collection, and we would like you to be a part of it. So please reach out to me. You can follow me at Clay Lasol on Twitter or Instagram. As for predictions, Toronto away is difficult. Scoreless draw. And NYC FC at home, 1-0 loss.
Valera.
I'm trying to go reverse jinxes here because predicting wins has not been working for me.
I'm gonna go. Well, first, before I give you my prediction, go to Broadway Sports Media. We have Ben Wright and I wrote a couple previews. One for the Euros, so if you want to learn more about that, go for it. And then we have another one coming out this week for Copa America. Gives you a little bit on each team. It's like a primer pretty much for you to go out there and just learn a little bit more about these competitions that are incredible competitions. Obviously, you can watch them as well. But yeah, they will give you a little bit of details on those teams. So that's the first thing I'm going to plug. Also, watch for 2 previews for Nashville SC that I'm writing as well this week, all while I'm going to Atlanta to watch this Copa America game. So it's a pretty busy week for me covering soccer here in Nashville. So make sure to tune in and be following me wherever at Valer Shabila on Instagram and Twitter, and also my YouTube channel, Valer Shabila. With that said, follow Kicking the 615. If you don't know about Kicking the 615, go to ki615.org. It's going to be a 1-1 draw in Toronto and a 0-0 draw at home with NYCFC. And in true Nashville SC fashion, it's going to be more draws. And Roomba's record is going to be 1-5-1. That's where I stand.
At PH Stephen HD. I don't have any fun stuff coming out or cool things, so go follow Clay and Valera's things. 0-0 draw against Toronto, and then a 3-0 win for Nashville against NYCFC. Hani Mukhtar scores a hat trick, and we'll all celebrate, and it'll be fantastic. And I cannot wait for next week. So thank you so much for listening to the show. We really appreciate it. Of course, you can also leave a 5-star review for us on any sort of platform, and we will mention and read that out loud. So if you do any sort of podcasting app, we'll read that. Again, thank you guys so much for listening to the show. We will be back next week. Hope you all have a good rest of your week watching Euros and Nashville SC.